In this lecture, we'll continue doing truth table practice problems. Now that we've done this multiple times, I won't labor these definitions again too much. Just want to present them so you remember what makes something valid, what makes something invalid. Remember, we're only interested in instances in which all the premises are true, and then we're going to look to see what the conclusion is in those instances where all the premises are true. If we find one situation in which the conclusion is false, the argument's going to be invalid, and then we'll just list a counterexample. But if in every instance the premises are all true, the conclusion is also true, that makes it valid. So looking at this first practice problem, we have two premises and our conclusion. And so look at the first premise, the tilde is there are no parentheses, so the tilde is just functioning over the Q, so we're going to ignore the ampersand R for right now, and we're just going to take all these values for Q and flip them over, so T's will become F's, and F's will become T's, like so. And then we can bring in the ampersand R again, and so we're going to look at these values here, look for where they both are true. That's going to be in those two instances. And so those will be true, and these will be false. And so we can erase those there. And we don't need this column anymore, so that's okay. We'll get rid of it too, so we don't get confused later. So that's those are the values for that premise. Looking at the next one, we have looks like three different operators, two tildes, one arrow, no sets of parentheses, so those tildes are just functioning over the individual letters themselves. So looking at the tilde Q first, flipping those from trues to falses, and falses to trues. And then same thing with the P, we'll do the tilde P next. Ignoring that for right now. So same thing as before, we'll look at our key, we'll flip the values across. And now we're going to use those values to determine the arrow. Remember, then arrow is true wherever the left side's false, or the right side's true. And so all of those are going to be true. This one's going to be false. And this one's false. With that, we can get rid of these two columns here. And then we can move on to our conclusion. Here, the tilde is just functioning over the P. So just got to flip the values once again. And then bring in the ampersand, ignoring those. So where are they both true? They're both true here, and they're both true here. So those ones are true, the rest of them are false. And get rid of those, get rid of this column. And now we can check for validity and look for instances in which we have all true premises. We've got all true premises there. And that looks like it. And in that situation, we have a true conclusion. And so this one is going to be valid. And since it's valid, there is not a counterexample. Look at this next one. We have two premises. We've got one here, one here. Here's our conclusion. And so look at this first one. We've got multiple operators. We have a tilde outside the parentheses. We have a double arrow within the parentheses, and then we have a tilde within the parentheses. So we're going to have to do the tilde R first, because the outside tilde, that one's obviously going to be the main operator. So which one comes next, the double arrow or the tilde? And because the tilde is only functioning over the R, we got to do the tilde first. So we're going to take all the values here from R and we're going to flip them. And then we can do our double arrow rule, including our Q. So wherever they match, it'll be true. And that's going to be here, here, and here. And so these are going to be true. The other ones are going to be false. And we can erase that column here, because now that we've done our double arrow, we don't need the tilde anymore, but we still have this outside tilde. So we're going to take these values and we're going to flip them again from T's to F's. Or sorry, from F's to T's and T's to F's. And then we can get rid of this column here. So that's that premise. Now we can do this wedge, and this wedge is pretty simple. So wherever they are true, or at least one of them are true, so it's going to be true here. So that's all we got to do for that one. And then our conclusion is pretty simple too. Same thing, it's an ampersand. Just got to look for instances in which they are both true. Those are both true there. And so all these other ones are going to be false. So we can erase those, and now we're going to look for instances in which we've got true premises. And those look like all of them. So we can ignore these other ones. And in those situations, we do have two instances in which we have a false conclusion. So it's going to be invalid. And then from that, we just got to make a counterexample. I'll just choose this one. So FTT. Looking at the next one, we have two premises and our conclusion. And so looking at this first premise, we have a tilde next to this Q. So let's do that one first. And then we'll bring in the wedge. Wherever one of them is true, it's true. I'm just looking at the right side right now because they're true, 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 true. And then we can look at the P, true, 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 true. And so those are the only instances in which those are false. Can get rid of this column here. So that's that premise. Now we've got two operators here. We got a tilde outside the parentheses, and then we got an arrow inside the parentheses. So we'll forget about the tilde for right now, and we'll just focus on the arrow. So we've got Q arrow R. That's going to be true wherever the left side's false or the right side's true. And so those are going to be those values for the arrow, and then we just have to flip them over for this tilde. like so. And then we just gotta erase this column here. So that's that premise. And then finally we have this conclusion that's got two different operators. And we gotta do the ampersand first because it's inside the parentheses. Looking for where they both are true. And that's gonna be here in lines 1 and 3. The rest of them, one of them is false. And so now we can bring in our wedge Q. Where is one of them true? Well, they are true in those situations. So we can erase this column here. Get rid of those. And checking for validity. Where do we have all true premises? Just there. And in that situation, our conclusion is also true. So this one's going to be valid. And since it's valid, it doesn't have a counterexample. Looking at this next one, we have a premise here and a premise here, and then our conclusion is just a single letter, just the letter P. So looking at this first one, we have three different operators. We have a set of parentheses, so we got to work within the set of parentheses, but inside the parentheses we have an arrow and a tilde. So we're going to have to address the tilde first because the tilde is just functioning on the Q. So we're going to ignore this and we're going to ignore this. We're just going to focus on the tilde Q. So those values are going to flip the Q. And then we can bring back in the arrow P. Remember, this is our left side, this is our right side. So an arrow is true where the left side is false, or the right side is true. And so in all these situations, it's going to be true. And these two are where they are false. Now with that, we can erase this because it's going to get pretty complicated. This might be the first time that we worked in the middle to one of the sides to the other side, but that's the order of operations here because the tilde is just functioning on the Q. And then we have to do the arrow, and then next we have to do the wedge statement there. And so we're going to look at our R and our values here on the right side. So anywhere where you have a true, it's true. So we're going to put these here. And the other instance in which they're both false is down here. So let's erase those and erase this column. There. And so that gives us the values for the full sentence there. Look at this next one. We have three operators again. No parentheses, so the ampersand is going to be our main operator. The tilde is functioning over the R here on this side. And the tilde is functioning on this Q over here. And then we just have to bring back in our ampersand, and we're going to compare those two together. And we're going to see that there's two instances down here in which they're both true. And so the rest of these are going to be false. So those are the values for that premise. And now we're going to look for instances in which these two premises are true. And we've got one, which is down here. That's all that I see. And in that situation, our conclusion is also true, so this is going to be valid. And since it's valid, we don't need a counterexample. Looking at this one, we have two premises that are going to be pretty straightforward. Just one operator in both of them. Use the same color there for both. I meant to use orange, and that's not much of an improvement, but at least they're two different colors. So those are our two premises. Here's our conclusion. Better get rid of that red. There we go. So, looking at the first premise, we're just going to take into account Q and R. Where are they both true? They're both true up here. The rest of them are going to be false. And then with this arrow, we have R arrow P. As I've said multiple times, you gotta make sure that you're reading this the right way. R is on the left side of the premise, P is on the right side of the premise, so we want to use this as our left side or our antecedent, and we want to use this one as our right side or our consequent. So, right side or consequent. So, an arrow is true, where the left side is false, or the right side is true. So those are going to be these here. It's those. So now we've just got to do the conclusion. Conclusion has two operators, an ampersand inside the parentheses and an ampersand outside the parentheses. So we got to do the one that's inside the parentheses first, which is Q and P. Where are they both true? They're both true here, and they're both true here. And so now we just got to do the ampersand here. Where are those both true? Both true here. And that looks like it. So true, and then the rest of them are going to be false. And we can erase this column here, don't need it anymore. And looking for where the premises are all true. Got true premises here, and that looks like it's about it. And in that one situation, our conclusion is also true. So this one is valid. And we do not need a counterexample because it's valid. Look at this next one. Two premises. We've got one here, here, and then our conclusion. These are pretty straightforward. So you've got two operators here. Tilde is operating on the P, so we gotta do that one first. And then we need to just include the arrow. So wherever the left side is false, or the right side is true, it's true. And then everywhere else it's false. Now look at this next one. We have ampersand, or sorry, we have a tilde functioning over the P, so we gotta do that one first. and then the Q, now we can include the wedge Q. And so we're going to look for instances in which we have one of the sides are true. That's going to be in all these situations. And so with that, we can erase this column. And then finally, we have to do this QR. And just as before, it's wherever the sides are true. And with that, we can do the evaluation of the argument itself, looking for instances in which you have true premises, get true premises here, true premises here, true premises here, true, and true. And if we look down through here, I'm going to cross these out since we've got so many. So the conclusion is true, 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 but we do have one false, so that makes it invalid. And so we need a counterexample. And since we need a counterexample, and we only have one instance, we just have to copy that there. Moving on to the next one, we have two premises. And then our conclusion. Looking at the first premise, we have two operators. The tilde is functioning just over the Q. So we'll reverse the values of the Q from the key. And then we'll do the double arrow. So wherever they match, it's true. Match, they match. They match, and they match. Everywhere else, one of them's false and the other one's true. So true, 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 false, false, false. We can get rid of this column here. We don't need it anymore. Look at this second one. We have three different operators. We're going to have to do the tilde first because it's just functioning over the Q. So we'll just take these values, Q, flip them over. Then we'll do the arrows. So we've got P as our antecedent. So wherever it's false, that arrow is going to be true. Wherever these tilde Q values are true, it's going to be true. And so we've got true in these situations. And false here. So we can get rid of this so we don't get confused. Get rid of these. And now we just have to take into account our R. And we got another disjunction, so we're just looking for instances in which one of these are true. And it's true. So erase these. And now we just have our conclusion, which is P or Q. So we'll get the R, look for instances in which one of them is true. Well, it's going to be a lot of them. Three trues. and a false, 3 trues and a false. And so with that, we can do our evaluation, where our premises true, they're true here, they're true here, true here. And all these other lines are false, or at least one of them's false. And looking at our values, we do have an instance in which the conclusion is false, even though we've got all true premises. So this is going to be invalid. And we're going to have to copy these values here as our counterexample. And that's that one. So the last one here, we have 2 premises. And our conclusion is just a single letter. So we don't need a column for that. Looking at this first premise, we have 3 different operators. Looking inside the parentheses, we have a tilde and an arrow. The tilde is functioning only over the R, so we'll have to do that one first. Flipping all those values of R from our key, and then we'll have to include our arrow. So our arrow is going to be our Q as our left side. So wherever our left side is false, our antecedent's false, it's true. Wherever our right side is true, consequent, it's true. So these are going to be true, and these top 2 are going to be false. So with that, now we can get rid of this column here. We don't need it anymore. And we just have to do the P or Q arrow tilde R. So just looking at P, where is P true, then the odds it's true, and then all these from 3 to 8, those are all true. So all of these are true, with the exception of the second one, where they're both false. So with that, we can erase this column. And that just leaves this other premise that we need to do. There are 2 operators. The tilde, it's functioning only over the R, so again, same thing as before. These just get flipped from the key. And then we can do our wedge statement, looking for instances in which they are true. So true, 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 true. These 2 are going to be false. Let's erase this one. And now we can determine the validity of the argument itself. Here's an instance in which we have true premises, true premises, true premises, true premises, true premises, true premises. So looks like we only have 2 lines that we can eliminate, these 2. And looking at our conclusion, well, there are plenty of counterexamples to be chosen or to choose from. Those 3 right there. So this is obviously going to be invalid. And as our counterexample, we've got 3 different options that we can choose. I'm going to choose this second one. Again, outside the realm of quizzes and exams, you could write any counterexample that you want. But on quizzes and exams, I'll give you just only one correct possible or one of the answers are correct. The other ones will be incorrect. But if you weren't taking quizzes and exams, it wouldn't matter which one you would list because any one of them shows that the argument itself is invalid. So that concludes this lecture. We'll do one more of truth tables.